you get mad, even if you get
Yes,
offended.
ma'am.
So what you gonna do? Because I guarantee you can't beat me up.
When I was the one that was harassed for years, bullied, intimidated, and harassed for years. And I'm going to be painted as the villain because y'all have deified this person. This industry is something else. And some of the people that you think are your mentors are literally and figuratively just trying to. He showed up to my apartment and offered me $100,000 to take my clothes off. He said, I don't even need to touch you. I just want to see you naked. I'm tired of this person gallivanting around doing these PR stunts. Oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do that. Well, then speak on, if you going to have, now, this particular guy is out here paying tuition for entire classes of HBCUs after this sketchy shit. Want to air him out too.
Tyler Perry is being dragged into a scandal so dark, it makes even the Diddy allegations look tame. A rising actor is accusing Perry of sexual assault, and he's not just pointing fingers. He's naming names, providing shocking details, and alleging a Hollywood cover-up that goes all the way to the top. And now, Monique and Katt Williams, two of Perry's most vocal enemies, are having the last laugh. If these allegations are true, it could destroy everything Tyler Perry has built. But the question is, was this always his dirty secret? Let's talk about the man who built an empire from the ashes and may now see it turn to dust. Tyler Perry is one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. Scratch that. He's one of the most powerful black men to ever touch Hollywood's gates. And he didn't just knock on the door. He bulldozed through it, barefoot, hungry, and with a pen in his hand. Perry went from sleeping in his car to owning one of the largest film studios in the world, Tyler Perry Studios, a sprawling kingdom in Atlanta that dwarfs the size of Disney's Burbank lot. And he did it without kissing the traditional Hollywood ring. No studio bosses, no co-writers, no permission, just his name on everything. Written, directed, produced, stamped with a Medea-sized signature that said, "This is mine." Oprah embraced him early on. Black audiences, especially churchgoers and working-class women, called him a savior, a voice for the voiceless. In a world where black stories were either ignored or watered down, Tyler gave us melodramas soaked in trauma, healing, and faith. He was the ultimate Horatio Alger story wrapped in gospel and wig glue. But with all that praise came power. Real power. The kind that makes people scared to speak. The kind that lets you rewrite the rules and punish anyone who doesn't follow your script. Because behind the smiling face, behind the rags to riches fairy tale, there's always been another narrative running quietly. The whispers, the rumors, the stories that never quite made it into the mainstream, but always lingered on the outskirts of the industry like smoke around a fire. People have said for years that working with Tyler Perry is a double-edged sword. Sure, he'll cast you when no one else will. Sure, he'll pay you. But you better not ask questions. You better not push back. You better not suggest a line change or, God forbid, a rewrite. Because Tyler doesn't do collaboration. He does control. Actors have complained, privately, that they weren't allowed to improvise or reinterpret a single word. Crew members have hinted that sets were run like military camps, where dissent got you cut, demoted, or blacklisted. And let's not forget, Perry once bragged about writing entire seasons of television alone in days without a writer's room. As if speed was proof of genius, not a warning sign for burnout and creative stagnation. The control, the ego, the alleged retaliations, it all adds up to a pattern. One that looks less like mentorship and more like manipulation. And then there's the loyalty test. If you work with Tyler Perry, you're expected to protect his image, even when it costs you your own. That's what happened to Monique, the Oscar-winning actress who says Perry told her, in private, that she was right for refusing to do unpaid press for Precious, that she was being unfairly punished by the industry. But did he ever say it publicly? Did he ever defend her out loud? No. He let her take the fall, let her be labeled difficult while he stayed clean. Because that's the game. Tyler Perry has mastered the art of silence and optics. He knows how to present himself as the unbothered, untouchable mogul. He doesn't clap back. He doesn't rant online. He just smiles, donates to charities, and walks red carpets with Oprah on one arm and his brand on the other. And that brand? It's built on respectability, on faith, on the idea that Tyler Perry is a good man who made it by doing things the right way. But now, with these allegations surfacing, people are asking, was that ever true? Or was it just a perfectly curated illusion? Because let's be honest, Hollywood doesn't reward goodness. It rewards control. And Perry has controlled every part of his empire. The scripts, the image, the narratives around his rise. He's cast himself as the hero in every room. The survivor, the generous boss, the moral compass. But what happens when the compass starts to spin? When people step forward with stories that don't match the clean lines of the Tyler Perry fairy tale. For years, no one dared challenge him. Not publicly, not directly, because the cost was too high. He held the power to make or break a career with a single phone call. One word from Tyler Perry, and you were in, or you were done. That's how untouchable he became. Not just successful, but sacred. A mogul wrapped in God talk and martyrdom. A billionaire wrapped in black pain. But now, the walls are shaking. And the whispers? They're getting louder. Let's take it back. Back to 2009. Back to the moment when Monique, fresh off her Oscar win for Precious, was supposed to be on top of the world. Hollywood was supposed to open its gates to her, shower her with leading roles, magazine covers, and A-list paychecks. But instead, she vanished, disappeared from the spotlight like a ghost. Why? Because she said no. She said no to doing free press for Precious. No to flying around the world on her own dime to promote a film that had already been paid for. No to sacrificing her boundaries just to play Hollywood's game. And for that, she was labeled ungrateful, difficult, a diva. But behind that smear campaign, three names stood tall: Lee Daniels, Oprah Winfrey, and Tyler Perry. The so-called trinity of black Hollywood royalty. And according to Monique, they were the architects of her downfall. She didn't stay quiet. She told her truth, loud and raw. She went on interviews, podcasts, stages, and said flat out, Tyler Perry is a manipulator. She said Tyler called her in private, told her she was right, admitted that she had been treated unfairly. But when it came time to defend her publicly, he ghosted, silent. He let the media paint her as toxic, let the industry blacklist her, let the public turn her into a punchline. Because Monique didn't just challenge a business deal, she challenged a system. And Tyler? He is the system. She exposed how he weaponizes respectability politics, how he cloaks himself in Christianity and clean language and doing things the right way, while moving like a backroom politician, always working to protect his brand, even if it means sacrificing someone else's reputation. And let's be real, people didn't want to hear it. They called her bitter, angry, unhinged. They said she was burning bridges she could never rebuild. But now, those same people are looking at Tyler Perry with different eyes. Because now, he's the one under fire. He's the one being accused of sexual misconduct, of abusing his power, of using his position as a gatekeeper to allegedly violate the very people he claimed to uplift. And suddenly, Monique doesn't look bitter. She looks prophetic. She warned us. She tried to tell the world that Perry's polished image was a mask, that behind the soft-spoken voice and the charitable donations was a man obsessed with control, perception, and power. That if you didn't play his game, you became an enemy. If you dared to question him, you were done. And what did the industry do? They laughed. They laughed her off, dismissed her as loud and emotional. But here's the thing about truth: it doesn't go away. It waits. It watches. And eventually, it comes back with receipts. And in Monique, she's sitting front row with the biggest "I told you so" of the decade. Because let's not forget, this wasn't just about movie. This wasn't just about press tours. This was about a culture in Hollywood, especially Black Hollywood, where silence is currency and obedience is survival. And Monique broke that code. She refused to play nice. And in doing so, she became a threat to the very empire Tyler Perry was trying to protect. And now that empire has cracks. The allegations coming forward today, serious, disturbing, and specific, are turning the spotlight back on Perry's history. People are revisiting every warning sign, every vague story, every actor who said, "I love him," and then trailed off. And in the middle of it all, Monique's voice echoes louder than ever. She named the behavior, she challenged the silence, and she paid the price. But now, she just might be the only one who comes out looking clean. So when you hear people say, "Why didn't anyone speak up?" remember, someone did. And Monique did. And we laughed. Now, let's talk about the lawsuit that has Hollywood holding its breath. Enter Derek Dixon, a name that, until recently, barely registered outside the circles of aspiring actors in Atlanta's indie film scene. But now, Derek Dixon isn't just a footnote. He's the whistleblower at the center of what may become one of the biggest scandals in Black Hollywood history. Just weeks ago, Dixon filed a bombshell lawsuit in Fulton County, Georgia, naming none other than Tyler Perry, Lionsgate Films, and even Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Productions as defendants. The document is explosive, 36 pages of detailed allegations, timelines, and names that read like the guest list at a billionaire's brunch. According to the suit, Derek Dixon says it all started with what seemed like a dream opportunity. A one-on-one meeting with Tyler Perry himself. Perry allegedly positioned it as mentorship, guidance, career advice, the kind of pull up another black man moment Perry has branded himself on for years. But what Derek describes is a nightmare disguised as a golden ticket. He claims Perry used his influence and reputation to gain his trust, offering vague promises of a breakout role, his big break. But that promise, according to Dixon, turned into something much darker. Dixon alleges that during a private encounter, he was drugged and sexually assaulted by Perry. Not implied, not hinted, explicit, and he's naming names. But that's not all, because if this were just one horrifying accusation, it would already be enough to send shockwaves. But Dixon says this wasn't an isolated incident. This wasn't just one night, one victim. He says this is part of a pattern, a methodical abuse of power concealed by the machinery of a billion-dollar empire. And here's where the lawsuit really starts to shake the foundation. Dixon claims that multiple production companies, Lionsgate, Harpo, and other unnamed executives, knew about Perry's alleged behavior, knew about prior complaints, and instead of taking action, they covered it up. Why? To protect the brand, to protect the money, to protect the image of a man who has been painted as a savior of black cinema, a faith-driven family man, and a mogul who did it the right way. Because if Tyler Perry falls, the companies tied to him fall too. The studios, the producers, the investors, they all had a stake in keeping his halo spotless. But Derek Dixon says the cost of that silence was human lives, careers destroyed, trauma buried, and he's not backing down. He's asking for financial compensation, yes, but he's also demanding accountability, transparency, and above all, a full public reckoning of what he calls a systemic culture of silence and complicity. And let's be clear, this isn't just about celebrity scandal. This is about power, about what happens when one man becomes so big, so untouchable, that the people around him stop asking questions. It's about the machinery that protects abusers when their success becomes more valuable than their morality. And here's the kicker. Derek Dixon's legal team isn't playing small. They've hinted there are other alleged victims, other men, possibly former employees, who may come forward now that the seal has been broken. The court of public opinion is already rumbling, and inside Hollywood, the whispers are turning into panic. People are asking, who knew? How long did this go on? And how deep does this cover-up really go? Because if even half of what's in that lawsuit turns out to be true, we're not just talking about the fall of Tyler Perry. We're talking about the collapse of the myth, the carefully curated image, the black excellence fairy tale that was built on the backs, and possibly the silence, of people who were used and discarded. And right now, Derek Dixon isn't backing down. In fact, he says he's just getting started. Sound familiar? Because if you're getting deja vu, you're not alone. The allegations against Tyler Perry echo something we've all been watching unravel in real time: the fall of Sean Diddy Combs. And when you lay both stories side by side, the parallels are chilling. Too chilling to ignore. Drugging, promised opportunities, abuse of power, career sabotage. These aren't isolated red flags. They're beginning to look like chapters from the same worn-out playbook. A strategy of manipulation, control, and silencing that thrives in the shadows of fame, money, and so-called respectability. Let's break it down. Just like Diddy, Tyler Perry spent decades meticulously crafting his image. A mogul, yes, but also a man of God. A symbol of faith and redemption. He wasn't just making movies. He was preaching morality through media, while holding court with Oprah and sitting at tables reserved for billionaires. His rags-to-riches story was so pristine, so untouchable, that few dared to question what was really going on behind those Atlanta studio gates. But that's the thing about curated images. They're not protection. They're camouflage. Diddy, too, sold himself as a cultural giant. A music kingmaker, a family man, a philanthropist. Meanwhile, lawsuits have exposed a behind-the-scenes world of NDAs, secret payments, abuse allegations, and a system designed to keep victims quiet. And now, as more and more men and women come forward, it's clear it wasn't just a coincidence. It was a pattern. And in Derek Dixon's lawsuit, we see those same patterns forming. Allegations of being lured in with career promises, then allegedly drugged and assaulted, followed by a systematic cover-up by production companies who had too much money and too much image tie to Tyler Perry to risk exposing the truth. That's not just scandal. That's infrastructure. A whole machine of silence built to keep the accusations buried under red carpets, church interviews, and blockbuster film premieres. And let's talk about handlers, because that's another shared link between Diddy and Perry. Both men are surrounded by elite, high-powered figures who appear to operate as both enablers and shields. The kind of people who don't just look the other way. They make sure others do too. People who manage the headlines, who twist the narrative, who pay the hush money or draft the ironclad NDAs that bury the truth in legal quicksand. And we can't ignore the role of the media in this either. Just like with Diddy, Tyler Perry's public persona as a safe, black mogul became armor. Because when you're the one who made it out, the one who built a billion-dollar empire, the one who represents black excellence in white Hollywood's eyes, people will protect you at all costs. Because to expose you is to shatter the illusion. And for the gatekeepers and financiers, that's bad for business. But here's the harsh truth. These curated personas are starting to collapse. And not because the men at the center suddenly changed, but because survivors are speaking louder. Because the playbook only works when the players stay silent. And that era might finally be ending. If the allegations against Perry are true, and if the same powerful hands help cover them up, then this isn't just about one man. This is about an entire system that trained us to look the other way. That convinced us to protect the empire, even if it was built on buried voices. So yes, this looks like Diddy. It smells like Diddy. But it's not just about Diddy or Perry. It's about how many others are still hiding behind the same mask. Katt Williams has never been afraid to burn bridges, because he knows most of them were built over rivers of lies. And long before Tyler Perry's name was tied to sexual assault allegations, long before Derek Dixon filed his lawsuit, and long before the internet started asking the hard questions, Katt was warning us. Loudly, unapologetically. And as usual, people dismissed him as crazy, paranoid, or bitter. But now, he's looking more like a whistleblower than a washed-up comic. In that now legendary Club Shay Shay interview with Shannon Sharpe, Katt didn't drop names, but he dropped bombs. He talked about how the most powerful black men in Hollywood weren't just gatekeepers. They were watchdogs for the system, tasked with protecting abusers, silencing victims, and maintaining the illusion of success for the masses. And when fans rewatched the footage after the Derek Dixon lawsuit dropped, the breadcrumbs suddenly made sense. Katt spoke about how rising actors, especially black men, were being put in compromising positions. How stardom often came with strings. How you weren't just signing contracts. You were signing silent agreements. Play the game. Keep your mouth shut. Pretend everything's fine. He didn't say Tyler Perry's name, but when he described a certain type of Hollywood figure, a moral leader who built an empire off of trauma narratives, who plays both savior and gatekeeper, who gets praised for representation, while quietly pulling the strings behind the scenes, people knew exactly who he meant. He even hinted at what happens when you don't play the game, when you reject the advances, when you say no behind closed doors. Suddenly you're difficult, unreliable. You stop getting auditions. Your phone stops ringing. Your name gets whispered around the industry like a virus. And the person who orchestrated it all? They're still on stage collecting humanitarian awards. Sound familiar? Katt knows the cost of speaking out. He's lived it. His career went from sold-out arenas to shadow bans and sabotage, arrests, headlines, character assassinations, all for telling jokes that hit a little too close to the truth. And now, with the Perry allegations making headlines, we're watching Katt's warnings go from conspiracy to confirmation. Because he told us that Black Hollywood wasn't the safe haven we thought it was. That some of the men who claimed to uplift the community were using their power for harm, not healing. And when people laughed him off, they weren't laughing because he was wrong. They were laughing because the truth made them uncomfortable. Katt didn't need names to make his point, because the pattern was the name. And now, as one empire starts to crack and another one falls apart, it's clear Katt wasn't ranting. He was revealing. So the real question is, how many other jokes were actually confessions? Tyler Perry didn't simply invent Medea, he weaponized her. For 2 decades, the towering matriarch in the floral dress and church lady wig let him slip past the rigid gatekeepers of Hollywood masculinity. Audiences howled at the slapstick, gun-toting grandma, while Perry quietly raked in billions and expanded his empire brick by brick. Off-screen, though, he made sure we never confused the costume with a man. Magazine spreads of him in tailored suits, late-night interviews peppered with "I'm a real man" sound bites, calculated reminders that any whisper about his sexuality was nothing but gossip. And every time speculation bubbled up, he reached for the same line. Medea is just acting, as if repetition alone could silence curiosity. But now, with Derek Dixon's lawsuit crawling through the court system and rumors of other men preparing to come forward, that carefully curated dance with gender reads less like playful performance and more like prestidigitation. Was Medea the hilarious misdirection that kept critics focused on the wig while the man behind it allegedly exercised a very different kind of power? Some insiders say yes. They argue that Perry's brazen on-screen femininity offered the perfect camouflage. Hollywood labeled him safe. Religious audiences dismissed any queer subtext as comedy, and potential accusers feared no one would believe a billion-dollar Christian philanthropist could cross such lines. In hindsight, the split image, a dress for the camera, hypermasculine assurances backstage, may have been less about art and more about control. When the Dixon suit hit Fulton County's docket, you would expect entertainment news to detonate. Instead, the explosion landed like a dud firework. No breathless Good Morning America segment. No roundtable debate on The View. Lionsgate issued no perfunctory, "We take these allegations seriously" press release. Even Oprah, queen of the empathetic sit-down, remained mum. The same outlets that ran wall-to-wall coverage of Diddy, Weinstein, and Russell Simmons suddenly found their breaking news cheerings out of order. To seasoned industry watchers, the hush feels coordinated, an invisible velvet rope shielding a man whose success is tied to too many bottom lines. Hollywood has pulled this trick before. It protected Harvey Weinstein while the Oscars piled up, protected Russell Simmons while Def Jam spawned fortunes, protected Bill Cosby until the dam finally burst. The formula is always identical: deny, downplay, delay. If Tyler Perry truly sits in that protected class, an economic engine wrapped in a gospel choir halo, then every studio with a back-end deal, every network licensing his reruns, and every celebrity who owes him a favor has a reason to stall the narrative until the public looks away. But silence, history tells us, only fattens the scandal for its eventual eruption. The facade is cracking, and the timetable now hinges on 2 variables: the courts, and the chorus of potential accusers. If Derek Dixon's case survives the first round of motions and discovery pulls Perry's private communications into daylight, the media blackout will collapse under its own weight. The minute another actor steps forward, especially one with receipts, studios will sprint for distance. You'll see creative differences, announcements, quietly delayed release dates, and hastily re-edited streaming banners that scrub his name from promotional art. Even Oprah will have to decide whether her famously soft-lit brand can absorb the glare of association. And the fans? Tyler Perry's core audience has always been the black church demographic. People who embraced Medea's moral lessons and saw Perry himself as a testament to divine favor. If those pews turn against him, the empire can't survive. Because Perry didn't just sell movies, he sold redemption stories packaged as sermons. If the preacher is exposed as a predator, the congregation walks. The cruel irony is that the storyteller who built an empire on tales of trauma, survival, and justice now finds himself cast as the villain in a narrative he can't rewrite. The plot twists he once engineered for catharsis now threaten to undo him in real life. For years, Tyler Perry wrapped himself in the robes of savior, father figure, moral compass. His rags-to-riches myth was a balm for communities that needed a win. But if Derek Dixon's allegations are proven true, and if others echo his story, then the man beneath the Medea wig is no martyr and certainly no messiah. He is another powerful figure exposed by the very voices he tried to silence. The lawsuit is only the prologue. The deeper drama lies in what Hollywood chooses next. More hush money and NDAs, or the uncomfortable reckoning that finally unmasks its safe black mogul. And if Diddy's swift downfall taught the industry anything, it's that silence merely delays the inevitable. The longer you protect the lie, the louder the truth will thunder when it finally breaks the door down. Either way, the world will be watching as the House of Medea faces its own final act.